Hi, everybody, and welcome back to a brand new edition of the Open Skies podcast. I'm very excited to bring to you my next guest, David Hailey. David, welcome to the Open Skies podcast.
Chris, how you doing today, man? And thank you for having me. It's a total honor. I really appreciate it.
Well, and this happened really fast. We had a mutual friend, Simon Sony, who introduced us, and I instantly thought that your product would be perfect to come on our pod because I think it really goes to our mission of telling kind of the hidden side of airlines and things that people don't normally see. So why don't you tell me about your product quick, and then we're going to go right into your background and how you came up with it.
For sure, yeah. Well, Simon is the man. He's introduced us to a lot, so I really appreciate what he's done for us and his overall contribution to the industries, truthfully. And so
Right.
How I got our product is we are an inventory management company where we use AI to count inventory automatically, right? And so what that means is, especially for the airline industry, that allows us to take pictures either with a mobile app or with a hardware camera that allows our clients to take pictures automatically and count the items. So instead of manually counting something, we can reduce the count time, improve the accuracy, and count
Right.
something in a fraction of the time automatically with artificial intelligence.
So there is absolutely no way somebody comes up with this idea without toiling in the belly of a pit or at a kitchen somewhere, counting pop cans and counting meals. So tell me a little bit about your background. How did you come to become an entrepreneur here?
It is not a straight line. Let me tell you, it is very it's a very windy road. So
Right.
so I am actually an accountant by trade. I got out of school, went to school in North Carolina, got out of school and worked at Ernst & Young or EY for about 8 years. If anybody knows EY, they audit a lot of the airlines around especially in the US. And so
Right.
they audit Delta, United. I think they audit American at that time, Continental at that time as well. And so I was on several of these accounts, auditing airlines, getting an understanding of kind of what are the issues from an airline perspective, what is material from a financial perspective. And, besides fuel, besides tech ops and the maintenance issues, onboard services and onboard inventory is also a large expense for airlines. And so
Yeah.
this was always one of our focuses or one of our areas from an audit perspective. And so I was at EY, as I said, for about 8 years. I left EY in an audit capacity and went to Delta Airlines. And at Delta, I did the same thing. I started at Delta in internal audit, and one of my audits every year was onboard services. What is going on with onboard services? What is going on with the inventory? And the issue it wasn't like a Delta specific issue. It is an industry wide issue. Like everyone in the industry has some type of issue with the inventory they put on the plane. Like they understand because either they use a catering company, right? Whether it's your Gates, your New Rest, your LSGs, your Donatas. They put these, majority of the industries use one of 6, 7 companies to cater the entire industry, and they put those items on the plane. So most airlines do a pretty good job of understanding exactly what goes on the plane, right? We
Right.
understand what we pay the caterer for. It's usually over 97, 98, 99% accurate of usually what the caterers put on the plane. The black box kind of is what comes off the plane. Like
Right.
what is being consumed on the plane, and kind of what are we taking back to the kitchen? What's being taken back to the kitchen, and what is being consumed on the plane? And a lot of times that is there's not a lot of transparency from the airline perspective for the airline executive to understand that process. And so I said there has to be a better way, right? From if you look at your big box airlines, your Uniteds, Deltas, Americans, Air France, KLMs, Etihad, Emirates, like pulling those items off the planes. Every day there's hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of items that come off these planes every day. And so manually counting these items is not feasible. So we came up with a way that allows them to take a picture of these items, and using with the advancements of artificial intelligence with AI, allow them to count these items automatically.
Wow. So you're taking something that takes so much time and is done almost across the board inaccurately, and trying to tighten that up. That's a pretty great mission.
Yeah, well, I don't say inaccurate. All I say is there's room for improvement, right?
Right.
Not telling any airline they do it wrong. I'm just saying, hey, if you're doing something manual now, there has to be a better way, right? Because you're spending resources, time, people, and we know that the human error rate, somebody can, finger something incorrectly, punch a wrong number in, or write something in incorrectly where you are. Now somebody has to read your handwriting and then data input that into another system. And so our platform is really kind of very simple platform, very easy to use, where, like I said, you take a picture of a tray of items. You can have a tray, let's say a liquor tray or a soda tray. We allow airlines to take a picture of those items as they come off the plane, whether it's on the plane with a mobile app or in the kitchen facility. Get an understanding of what is coming off. Take a picture in less than a second, and gives you enough data to make a financial decision about how can we be smarter about the items we load on the plane.
So you've discovered this need, right? And you discovered this need from actually being in the field, right? Like you're out there seeing the problem as an auditor, seeing the problem from that end. How do you take that and build a company around it? Because I think that's fascinating. A lot of people have brilliant ideas and they just stay bouncing around in the head. I think I had 4 on the way to work here. But right. To actually take it, to start something and to take that risk. So walk me through the start of Countify and how you grew this company.
Yeah, it was a labor of love. Let me tell you, it's a labor of love, and it's not a straight line. We started about 3.5 years ago out of COVID. So if you think about 3.5 years ago, really no airlines were spending any money, right? They weren't spending any money. They were just coming out and getting an understanding of what life after COVID looks like. And
right.
So, but we started with a very specific problem. Like, how can we make the airline inventory problem more efficient, more effective? But what we realized is, we can take pictures of bottles of Bacardi or Jack Daniels or cans of pop, as you say in Canada, we say soda down here in Atlanta. We can take pictures of that stuff, but we realize it doesn't matter what we take a picture of, right? So we can build a AI model on a lot of these items or any of these items. And so, although we were targeting the airline industry first, because of the timing coming out of COVID, we actually,
right.
Our first clients were in the healthcare space, in hospitals, or like lumber yards. Lumber yard was one of our first clients.
Really?
Anywhere somebody was manually counting something, then we had a process to take a picture of it and count it. And then, in the last several years, as airlines kind of came out of COVID, became a lot more cost effective, right? The items on board, the inventory that they're putting on board the plane, like to be more and more competitive, those expenses are continuously rising, right? They know that we're putting more craft beers on planes. We're putting, more expensive food on planes, but we still have cost pressure. Like, it's
right.
not a year that goes on that an airline does not have cost pressure where they are, have to be focused on reducing costs. And so as that came around, airlines started to say, hey, we know that there's a lot of waste in the onboard inventory process. Is there a way to reduce this waste, right? While keeping our customers happy, while staying competitive, giving our customers the product that they want on board, but still kind of having an efficient way to count these items. And that's where Countify stepped in. And so we have been a part of several accelerators, whether it's Hangar One. I think IAG has Hangar One accelerator. We're a part of Intellect, which is an Emirates accelerator as well. So very early on, before we had kind of material customers, we got part of those accelerators and kind of prove what we could do, prove what our technology could do. With IAG, we did a couple projects with Iberia. With the Intellect process, we did a project with Emirates, and looking at sodas and looking at beverages that come off the plane, looking at food that comes off the plane, right? And so getting that understanding. So that's kind of how we started. The first step was getting into these accelerators that kind of gave you the firsthand connections in the airline industry,
right?
That people that were making decisions and cared about the waste and cared about kind of the inventory on board.
after those accelerators and after you prove out your concept, what's the next step? Like, how do you approach clients and get them excited about the savings and the accuracy? I know coming back from COVID, a lot of airlines laid off an incredible amount of staff and had a lot of trouble hiring them back. So that must have been part of the hook here, right?
Man, really, it was trying to talk to airline, and some, truthfully, it really depends, right? Because some airlines get it and some don't, right? Some airlines are like, we don't have a problem. It's not a problem of ours. A lot of people don't like to open up the kimono and show kind of the problems that we're having.
Right.
Our first question that we usually ask, and it's really not about us. Our first question that we ask any airline or any client really is, how do you know how much you're wasting with inventory per month? Right? Have you been able to at least calculate that number? Or one, do you think you're wasting money per month on inventory? Usually the answer is yes, but a lot of airlines have no clue about. Really don't know how much is coming off the plane, how much is being wasted, and so we talked to several airlines that, hey, we've done a study. We'll do audits where we'll place people. One person will be in Birmingham, another person will be in Salt Lake City, and or a team will be in Salt Lake City, and we'll try to understand. I try to name random cities, but we'll try to understand kind of what's going on the plane and what comes off the plane. The problem is a lot of times those are such small sample sizes.
Yeah. Right.
So you can put a team to audit, one flight or two flights or even 5-6 flights a day, but that manual process takes a long time, and it doesn't extrapolate well to the rest of the enterprise.
Right.
Right. So I can even do an audit, and even when I was in audit at Delta, that's exactly what we did. We would do audits to understand kind of what items are coming off the plane, where we would have physically a team of people that would count all the beverages, all the items that came off the plane. And then we would say, okay, what does this mean how does this relate to the enterprise? And it's very hard to take that such small sample size and extrapolate to the rest of the enterprise. And so what we had to do, because you have to look at tray by tray, drawer by drawer, right?
Right.
Pull trolley by trolley.
Even city pair by city pair too, right? Like
exactly, yeah. You have to do
stage length matters. Yeah,
it totally matters. For example, if you think about most airlines, whether you're flying out of New York or you're flying from Atlanta or Chicago or LA, I'll talk about this example all the time. Most airlines will fly, whether they go to, let's say New York. Let's say New York, they go from New York to Salt Lake City. Right, they'll put the same amount of liquor on a flight from New York to Salt Lake City that they do from New York to Las Vegas.
Oh, now you're trying to trigger my previous world as a continuous improvement analyst. One of the stories we talked about was the previous airline I was with was loading 8 or 9 beverages per person on a 45-minute flight and carrying all that inventory back and forth, and it didn't make any sense. So this is right up my wheelhouse. That hits me hard.
Yeah, exactly. Because a lot of times they load the beverages based on plane type, right? Not on destination, right? And I get it. It is a very complicated. It's amazing that anything gets on a plane, truly, because it is a very complicated process. My hat goes off to all of the in-flight process, the onboard services process, and the caterers, because it's a very complicated process, especially out of your large hubs in the U.S. or overseas as well that cater several hundred flights a day. Like it's a very it's organized chaos, right? But if you think about just the overall waste, if I'm putting all these items on, even though the shelf life of a bottle of Bacardi or Jack Daniels is still a long time, so you're not wasting that inventory, right? But if you think about if I can reduce my inventory expenses, right? How can I reduce that inventory expense? And then also that is weight, right? Those items can be very heavy. A two-sided trolley can weigh upwards of 500 pounds, right? So if you think about
which can literally translate into millions of dollars in fuel being burned a year.
Of course,
100%.
Of course, it can translate, and it does. It does translate into millions of dollars every year that these airlines are put. And so what we try to do is just have a solution that is very easy to implement, that allows airlines to understand, like, there is a process that we can at least get an understanding of what is coming off the plane, right? That's the
Right.
first. Can we have enough data to say we understand what comes off the plane, and then allow us to, optimize inventory levels, and see the fuel impact, potentially see the labor impact as well. Because you also think there's fuel, but there's also people putting these bottles
Yep.
back on these trays as well, right? So it's not just a inventory aspect, it's not just a fuel aspect, but it's also a labor aspect. So we try to, I guess your original question was, how do you talk to airlines about kind of what the issue is, or how do you get airlines on board? A lot of times it's just understanding, like, do you understand what your costs are, or what you're wasting per month for these items, right? And,
Right.
and if you do, great, that's cool. But if you don't, we can, do a simple POC, a couple weeks to a month, to show you, like, here's a way that we can start calculating and giving you enough data to make better financial decisions.
Well, and I think the data part is really important. Like I said, in my previous world, anything that goes on the plane is considered a cost, and that so to buy technologies and to change processes, you have to convince the CFO types and the controller types that this is money well spent. So you need to come to them with, hey, by paying for this product, we're going to save this much. And you have to be able to quantify that, which is extremely difficult with catering, as you said, because it's such a large number and so many different flights you need to reconcile. It's almost impossible to do it manually. Then we ran into that problem back in the day.
It is very hard to do it manually. Because, I mean, if you think about it, we're putting, aluminum tubes in the air full of jet fuel and and getting from one place, point A to point B, right? So
Right.
the industry itself is just a very complicated industry, and it's miraculous what the airline industry is able to do. But everything else is kind of ancillary, right? If you think about it, everything else is ancillary. Everything else is, hey, how can we get you more comfortable while you're on this journey? And
Right.
so, especially the big box airlines are taking it, have hundreds of millions of dollar budgets to make sure that our passengers are comfortable while they're on this journey, right? And they choose that particular airline. And so what we try to do is say, hey, we understand that the budget is there. Like I said, your big box airlines probably spend several $100 million a year on the food, on the catering process, on the beverages, the items. And so, but allowing them to get some kind of insight. And so some kind of insight to say, now we understand that people are not drinking Bacardi, but they prefer a whiskey, right? So if you can come and say, like, people are not drinking rum as much unless they're going to the Caribbean, right? On the
Right.
Caribbean, everybody's drinking rum, or leaving the
Everybody's
Caribbean,
drinking it,
everybody's
yeah.
drinking rum, right? But if they're going, stateside, they're going North America, South America, or the Europe, they're either drinking vodka or they're drinking bourbon or whiskey or gin. Like, there's that kind of data can be very important. Or if they're from a pop or soda perspective, what sodas are, because sodas actually do expire, right? Your shelf life of your sodas and your beers, those things do expire. And so having knowledge about those things, and I didn't even mention about the menu changes. All airlines usually change menus every quarter, or at least every twice a year. Every 6 months, a menu is being changed. And so having insights of to what works, what doesn't work, what passengers want, what passengers don't want,
Right.
can be very important.
So I could envision a world, and you're probably already doing this, so I'm not giving you any ideas, but this is an area where you don't get a lot of feedback, right? Like when I'm flying and I've been given a meal, I might eat the chicken, I might eat the bun, I might take one bite of the dessert, and I don't like the dessert, but I'm not upset about that. I'm not going to write in and complain. I'm not going to tell the airline, your tiramisu was awful or whatever. Is there a way to look at what's coming back and go, okay, they're eating the bun, they're eating the chicken, and they're leaving the dessert. Maybe our dessert sucks and we need to swap that out.
It is. So not only do I've talked a lot about beverages, but we look at food as well. So
Okay.
you look at, your first class, business class, economy food that comes off the plane. A lot of times, depending on the airline's processes or the catering process, like we have a client now in Europe where they have a conveyor belt, And so as these items are coming back to the kitchen, they dump it out on a conveyor belt, right? And so we have a camera above that conveyor belt that looks at all of these items that are coming off, and we can tell them people are not eating the salad. People are not eating the cheese plate. People are not eating the croissant, right? With that data, you can say, okay, yeah, if you think about it, the side salad is it makes the meal look whole, right? You say, I want a whole meal, and so I need a salad, I need a main dish, and I need dessert. But if people aren't eating it, then there's several things you can do. You can either reduce the size of the salad, or you can say, okay, we're going to load salads at 75% or 60%, and then go down. Because if you notice, a lot of airlines now are like, I'll go down the aisle and ask you, instead of every plate, every tray having a piece of bread on it. Now a lot of times they'll ask you, do you want a piece of bread, right? And that, I think that is a indicative of, hey, there's ways that we can save money on this, but still not compromising the service that we're giving. So yes, to answer your question, yes, we do have a process where we can look at food that comes off the plane and tell them exactly what the items are, tell them exactly what is not being touched. So we kind of categorize it in touched and not touched, right? So if an item is not touched, that means the person did not want it, did not look at it at all. And so, but everything is wasted though. They still have to throw it, because if a side salad goes on a plane, you can't use it for the next plane.
Yeah.
You have to throw it away.
Once it's out, it's garbage. Yeah.
It's gone. It's gone. And not to mention the food itself, but the container it comes in. Think about single-use plastics, right? Think of every airline now has overall sustainability goals. And so think about as much single-use plastics, or whatever that carton or that salad came in, we're able to give you that data to be smarter about, these are the things that you can reduce.
So airlines literally have full departments trying to get feedback from first class guests and that on food and beverages and whatnot. And you guys are doing this with automation, giving probably more accurate, you could say you like the food or not, but I know whether you ate the salad or not, right? Like you could get that granular with it and help kind of target that menu to be optimized. Like you want people to eat most of everything on the plate, right?
I mean, that's the goal. But think about the last time you flew and you had a great experience and you gave feedback for a great experience. Yeah. Like a lot of times people don't give feedback for a great experience. They give feedback because they're upset and it was a bad experience, right? So a lot of times you might not know what was good on the plane, but you know what was bad, potentially.
Yeah, right? Indifference doesn't give you feedback.
Exactly. Indifference doesn't give you feedback. And a lot of times, and we do like flight attendant focus groups. So we'll talk to a bunch of flight attendants and say kind of what's good, what's bad. But usually the loudest, what good or bad, and I hope I don't get in trouble for saying this, usually the loudest voice that airline executives hear, especially onboard services, is the flight attendants. Right. Like flight attendants, because they're the ones that are closest to the passenger. They're the ones that are closest to the food. And so they're the ones that are giving feedback. Hey, we ran out of this. We don't have that. But it's still word of mouth, right? It's still word of mouth. And so those are usually the voices that the onboard services or in-flight team hears, because it is truthfully, it's the loudest a lot of times. And it's so subjective.
And it's so subjective.
It's very subjective.
Because if I'm the flight attendant who got yelled at by somebody who didn't get their Bacardi, that's going to stick in my head that we can never run out of Bacardi. But that's not based in a large sample size or fact. That's a feeling and an emotive situation, not an actual statistical one.
I totally agree, Chris. Yeah. And really that is our overall goal. Like we really don't have, a lot of times for us, we don't have, as they say, like a dog in the fight. Like we don't really care, right? We don't have a dog in the fight. We are just trying to give airlines enough data for them to make a financial decision, right? And the good thing about, computer vision and AI, we always back it up. Like we have the picture. So we want to see what picture was taken during this time and see the actual items that came off the plane. We can go back to September 3rd at 4:00 to see exactly what these items look like. So, somebody might be telling you, hey, we ran out of Bacardi, or we ran out of Jack Daniels, or we ran out of whatever. But if that picture shows like, oh, there's actually items there, then it's hard to dispute it, right? And so
it may be surfacing a break in a process, or maybe somebody's galley was separated differently or whatnot, right? Like it really does give you that quantifiable information to make decisions, and it's missing in this industry in so many different ways. But I found it to be particularly missing in that in-flight world, just because, like you said, it's kind of the afterthought. Safety, on-time performance, all of those take precedence over whether we counted the right number of pop cans on board, right?
Exactly. Flight attendants and pilots have a lot of things to deal with, right? They have passengers to deal with. They, I guess, I don't know if it's called D0 in Canada, but
yep.
Okay. So yeah, D0, we got to make sure this plane takes off on time. The doors are closed. The bags are up. People are sitting down. Like, there's a lot of things to deal with. And so, as you say, the items that are boarded, the food, the drinks, sometimes is an afterthought. But if you think these, as I said, these big box airlines that are spending several $100 million on these items, even your smaller airlines, like we talk to airlines all the time that still might be spending 30, 40, 50, 60 million dollars on onboard services. Like, that is their budget. And so they still have to, and there's cost pressure every year. And I think that's the biggest thing. Like, there's cost pressure to say, hey, we have to reduce this cost, but you also want to please the customer, right? You also want to please the customer, make sure the customer has the items that they want, the local draft beer, or the local fish or chicken or whatever they want. And so it's hard to make those type of decisions without data, right? And so we're just giving data to help you make those decisions.
Are you ever going to match that up with a consulting piece? Like using, I can imagine with more airlines you sign up and more information you get, the better this model gets, where the model can actually kind of kick out, like, not only are you loading too much rum on this, but you should load this instead. And here's why we think that. Have you thought about that, or is that where the business is going? Or
yeah, so we have, and we're actually talking to two potential partners that have airline consultancies, and that's exactly what they do, right? They are consultancies, and they can come in and say, here is the optimal. So it's really like inventory optimization, right? It's not just like inventory counting. We can tell you what you have, what's coming back, but how can we optimize inventory to allow you to make better decisions? I think that is the next level, right? That's stage 2. I think with a lot of airlines, we're still stage 1, because a lot of the data that we're giving, some airlines have never seen before, right? They've never seen this type of data. And so one of our challenges is kind of explaining to them how to digest it. So, okay, I know 70% of the Bacardi rum is coming back. Now what? Now, what do I do? Do I cut it by 10%, 30%, 40%? Like, what does that look like? And so the step 1, I think, is like showing you the data, allowing you to rely on the data as well, right? So allowing you to rely on the data. And part of that's on us. Part of that is on us to prove, like, hey, this data is accurate. You can trust it. And because the last thing, as I said before, the last thing that airlines want to do is make a decision and the customers are upset, right?
Right.
If that happens, then they're doubling all inventory on all the planes, right? Because the customer is not happy. So we have to make sure that our data is reliable. It's auditable. They can understand exactly kind of what's going on. And so what we try to do is, hey, you can take small chunks. Like, hey, if we see that, I keep going Bacardi, but Bacardi's coming back at 70%. Is there a way you can cut 10%?
Right.
You can cut 10%, you can cut 15%. You see the savings there, right? But you continue to still, use the Countify platform and see, okay, we cut 10%, which means our items that are not consumed or not coming back should also go down by 10%, right? And then we see that savings. And so a lot of times, with airlines, it is like immediate. I need to see the savings today to make it to budget next year, right? I need to see the savings in 2024 to even get a budget line item in 2025. But I think it is for this item particularly, it is very important to say, hey, we have to give it a little bit of time to make sure we can reduce the expenses and keep the customer happy. So it's a very fine balance.
Yeah, you just kind of hit on the Lean Six Sigma paradox, which is, it takes time, but you need to see results right away.
Right, right, exactly. Exactly. It is the airline mantra. Like, what have you done for me lately? I need to see it. I need to see it today for me to believe it.
The thing though, so many times when you're running a continuous improvement initiative, or when airlines are actually looking at cutting costs, they get really serious about it. They'll put boots on the ground. They'll put a guy, like you said, in Birmingham, and I can't remember what was the other city that you used as an example.
Salt Lake City or something.
Salt Lake City. They'll have somebody on each
Calgary.
side. Yeah, or Calgary. Yes, coming up to Canada, right? You count everything on and off that flight for 6 weeks. You right size it, and you go, "Hey, we solved the problem. We're good to go." And then the moment you stop looking, you go right back to loading the Bacardi on, or you go right back to maxing out your galleys without any science behind it. You need to have that information on a regular, steady basis in order to constantly make tweaks and to constantly see that savings. And that's one of the hardest things I found in my career of getting people to understand.
Yeah, it's tough because if you think about your services always change. As I said, your menu is going to constantly change, right? And the overall passenger in the industry itself is cyclical, and there's seasonality, right? So I understand from the flight pattern kind of how my load factor changes over time,
right?
And my menu is going to change over time. So if I'm changing my menu every quarter or every 6 months, then I still need to have that data, right? So I still need to understand if the menu item that I just put on here is working or it's not working, right? So we've seen a lot where you will put up a particular type of beverage on the plane, and that beverage might not work. People don't like it. As I said, like we talked to airlines a lot, and like for some reason tequila, it wasn't a popular drink years ago. Nobody put actually tequila on a plane.
Right.
But they tried to figure out, is there a way we can put a margarita on the plane? Because people like margaritas. So now we had to figure out how we can do a margarita necessarily, but without having a single tequila, and without taking the time for the flight attendants to mix and make a margarita, right?
Right.
And so, but you can have those products, but as soon as you change to those type products, then you have to understand, okay, are people drinking it? Is it working? Does it expire? Like what happens? And so we've talked to several airlines that have this challenge. Like they know that per category, we're going to put one thing. We're going to have one rum. We're going to have one vodka. We're going to have one bourbon or whiskey, right? But other things might be different. And food can be very similar as well, right? So from a food perspective, we know the food cost can be very, very high. Food cost can be very, very high, right? And so if you're looking at even your economy food, where you have your economy meals, where you have one chicken, one pasta, one beef, right? And so if people are not eating the beef, we can see, so that our client in Europe, we can see like all these items are coming back. Beef is not popular for some reason, right? Or the vegetarian meal is not popular. And so you're able to make changes. Now it is down line, right? You can't see it on Tuesday and make a change on Friday, just how the industry works. But you do have enough data to say, hey, we see that 40% of these beef meals are coming back. They're not popular. Is there a way we can adjust, right? We can adjust.
And when I talked to, like, one of the previous podcasts we did was with, like we said, Simon, the catering expert. And I can just think of his career. A lot of his decisions would have had to be made on feel, and a lot of that expertise and talking to people. He probably never had this kind of data to tweak a menu before.
Yeah, I don't think so.
And that's got to be such a huge advantage, like to be able to switch something out every quarter when something isn't being consumed and isn't being eaten. And like I said, guests don't give you that feedback. They don't come and say, hey, the flight was excellent. We were on time. Both my bags got here. Your chicken wasn't very good. And, I really enjoyed the check-in process. You don't get that kind of feedback, right?
No guest is going to tell you that. And you're right. And so now I think what happens and what we see is, taking a tour of the kitchen. The other way you could take a tour of the kitchen, look in the waste bins, look at the items that are coming back, and sometimes you can get a feel for. I see that these items are not being consumed, right? You can talk to the caterer, because the caterers are there every day, and they're very knowledgeable items that are coming back. But sometimes that doesn't make it all the way up the chain, right? That doesn't make it all the way up the chain, and still it's a conversation. It's not that there's not data, there's not a spreadsheet, there's not a dashboard that someone that's making the decisions in food planning, galley planning, all those planning groups that are making those, that have that data to make those decisions. Sometimes they're not talking to the people that are in the kitchens. They're not talking to the caterers. They're not talking to the the airline catering manager or the kitchen manager. They're not talking to those people. And so, is there a way to get consistent data where everybody in the enterprise understands what is going on in Atlanta, what is going on in Amsterdam, what is going on in Houston? And so that data, I think, is important. That from my understanding, has not been available at a wide scale, right? To be able to provide that data and that data to be like scalable as well. Like we can have it in this city, but we can also have it throughout our enterprise, which is tough. But yeah, that's where we're going.
The next question I have for you is, what's next for Countify, right? Because I know you're in a growth phase. You're going to acquire airlines and customers and that kind of thing. But as far as the product goes, what's the next step? What are we looking at as the next Countify 2.0 kind of thing? Because I can't imagine you're good enough just leaving this alone and resting back on it.
Not at all. I mean, so airlines is the majority of our business, is our main focus, but we do have other clients in other industries. But I think is how can we get integrated with the catering platforms as well, right? So there's catering platforms, catering systems that catering companies use, and there's several that we're having conversations with now. That if there is a catering platform that shows like a galley plan, there's a catering that you're ordering your food from, that you are now. I won't name the one. There's like several on top of my head. I won't name them, but we all know that there's several catering platforms that the airlines are using and the catering companies are using.
Right.
But think about if there's ways for everybody to hold each other accountable. So our next step is like, how can, when the airline says, hey, I want to make sure that I paid for, I paid for 25, let's just say 25 beverage drawers or 25 beef meals to go on the plane, that I actually got 25 beef meals, right? Because
without manually counting them.
Without manually counting them, right?
Right.
Because now it's really on the flight attendant for him or her to have that, that piece of paper that is on the actual trolley, that him or her has to actually sign off and say, yes, this trolley is correct. And I think they give that to the caterer before the flight takes off. Like that's kind of quality assurance. How can we make sure from a quality assurance perspective that everything that we paid for or we expect to be on the plane is on the plane? I think that's step one. Step two is the main problem I think that we're solving now is consumption. How can we make sure things that are coming off the plane, how we understand what things are coming off the plane, and have a direct line into that. And so integration with the catering system, with the catering platform that understands here are the items that are coming off, and how can we be smarter about the next items we load, right? And so if you know that the especially at your larger hubs, your larger kitchen facilities, it's all about consistency. Like it's hard to be specific based on route, right? It's very difficult. I want to load something different. As I say, it's loading something different to Salt Lake City is than Las Vegas is very complicated because it's a logistical nightmare. I can't take all these trolleys and say, okay, these are going to Salt Lake City. Let me take the time to reduce the liquor that goes on here, reduce the food that goes on here. People in Salt Lake City do not like pork for some reason, or do not like beef. Let me double the amount of chicken I put on there. That's hard. It's just easier to say, let's just make them all the same. If I make them all the same, it's less room for error. It's less
and fill them to the brim.
And fill them to the brim. Exactly. Fill them up, because that way I don't have any issues. I don't have any issues, and I know everybody's going to be, somewhat happy because they're not going to run out of inventory, right? But from a cost perspective, it is not efficient, right? And I think we were talking to the Aviation Sustainability Forum at a conference in Hamburg this past May or June or something. And they came up with a number that says the airline industry spends about $4 billion of things that go on the plane, are not touched, come off the plane, have to be thrown away.
Wow. That's a staggering number.
$4 billion, right? And people are starving every day in every city in the world.
And
right?
airlines are going bankrupt across the world because their margins are so tight.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if there's a way we can get a little bit smarter, and obviously that's an industry number, right? So per airline, that number varies. But if there's a way that we can give some type of insight, some type of data to say, hey, we see these items that are coming back. How can we be smarter about these items that are coming back and just load less?
That's a really compelling story. How can for the people listening, how best to get a hold of you? Because I can think of 5 or 10 listeners right now that are going to listen to this and say, "Hey, I want to talk to David. I want to get in touch with him because this is a problem that we're living right now and we're going through right now." So, how do airlines get in touch with you, and what does a POC look like?
I'm gonna tell them call Chris. Call Chris.
Right.
Chris has all my references. I mean, our website, Countify.com, is the easiest way. We have information on Countify.com that shows you from an airline perspective how we work with clients. We love POCs, right? We're in the middle of 2 POCs right now with airlines, one in the US and one in Europe. And it can be a short, 1 month POC where we look at the items, whether you want to look at beverages that come off the plane, whether you want to look at food that comes off the plane, or other items, where cups, plates, things like that. So we can do like a month POC, right? We do a month POC. It's usually like a fixed cost. It's a very low cost. It's almost like dating. Like we date for a little while to see if you like us, if we like you, if we want to get married, right? And really to make sure that the data that we provide to you is valuable, because that's right. Our overall goal. We're not trying to talk you into or a big sales cycle. It's like, hey, this is the data that we're able to provide to your airline. Is it valuable or not? Do you find value in it? And there's 2 steps to that. If you don't find value, what are we doing wrong that allow you to find value, right? And if you do, like, how can we expand it to make sure you're one, being more sustainable and making better inventory decisions?
Right. Well, that is a great mission, because I think you're not only going to save money, but there's a fuel component, a carbon dioxide component, and a sustainability component. So, David, from the first time we met, I thought this was a story our listeners had to hear. So I really appreciate the time you spent with me today. That was great. And I'm going to have you back on again in a couple of months when you get a couple more clients and you can tell me some more success stories.
Exactly. It's all good, Chris. Whenever you need, let me know. I'm here for you. And I've never been to Calgary. So the next time we talk, and as long as after like April, May, I will come to Calgary, and we will after when it gets a little bit warmer, I'll come to Calgary. We'll have this face to face.
I think that's a great idea. We'll wait till the snow melts first.
Right. Exactly, man. But so happy to be here. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Thank you for coming on. And thank you for listening to the Open Skies podcast. We're going to be back with some more great episodes coming up later on in the year. Thank you.